up today, saying the deal does not address their concerns. The surviving Korean victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery reject Seoul and Tokyo's landmark agreement aimed at resolving the issue. The US confirms that an ISIS leader with links to the Paris terror attacks was killed last week in an airstrike on Syria. Plus, Beijing sees smog more than 20 times over recommended levels, but no red alert is issued. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Wednesday, December 30th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this morning: the surviving Korean victims of Japan's wartime sex crimes have more or less rejected Seoul and Tokyo's landmark deal settling the issue of Japan's sexual enslavement of women before and during World War II. The women say the government should have consulted with them first because they think the agreement didn't go far enough to heal their wounds. Kwon So-ah starts us off.
This is the house of sharing where 10 of the so-called comfort women reside and where Korea's vice foreign minister made a visit Tuesday to talk to them. But the elderly women are asking, why after Korea and Japan's landmark settlement? Korea's vice foreign ministers Im Sung-nam and Cho Tae-yeol met with the elderly women at shelters for former victims in Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province. During their visits, the ministers explained the outcome of the bilateral agreement, but it was met with criticism and concern.
My tears have never dried out.
We are the victims. How can the government agree to a settlement just like that? We cannot accept the deal. We have to be compensated individually.
The women pointed out that Japan did not take legal responsibility for the atrocity, which has been one of their main demands, and expressed disappointment that the government did not consult with them before finalizing the issue with Tokyo.
I'm sorry that we cannot provide you with an agreement that satisfies you completely, but the government will do its best so that the settlement is not the end of retrieving your honor and dignity, but just the beginning.
89-year-old Lee Ok-sun viewed Japan's apology as ungenuine.
반드시 그 피해자 앞에 와서 물 밖으로 간다 사과를 해야 그게 진짜 사과지.
And he added that such an apology has to be made by Prime Minister Abe himself. She is one of only 46 Koreans alive who are officially registered as so-called comfort women.
할머니들 맨날 대사관 앞에 가서 주먹질 사죄라 배상해라. 비가 오나 눈이 오나 치고나 더구나 그 자리가 지켜야 돼. 이렇게 해도 그게 혹하고 할머니들 힘만 빼고 할머니들 더 피곤하게 맹글지.
Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, despite that report and the opposition from the victims themselves, there is little doubting that this week's landmark agreement between Korea and Japan was a significant step forward for the two countries' bilateral relations. But as we heard there are still some major points of contention that need to be ironed out before the deal can be hailed as a success. Our Lee Soo-eun has this report.
The agreement between Seoul and Tokyo on the issue of wartime sexual slavery has been called historic, landmark, breakthrough. But major points of contention remain, raising questions about whether the issue will be fully resolved. Under the agreement, Tokyo offered a formal apology to the elderly women survivors, saying the Japanese government, quote, feels responsible and promised to pay Seoul $8.3 million for the establishment of a foundation that will offer medical and other services to the women. Japan did not, however, specify whether its responsibility is moral or legal, nor did it say whether the funds offered are to be considered a form of compensation or reparations. Of the two, only reparations imply legal compensation for losses caused by illegal acts.
The deal cannot be seen as an advance because the Japanese government is simply repeating what previous administrations have said. The deal should have included a line banning the use of offensive language by Japanese politicians and others that have insulted the victims or distorted history.
Another sticking point is whether the statue of a young girl symbolizing the women who were forced to serve as sex slaves will be moved from its current location across the Japanese embassy in Seoul. Tokyo wants the statue moved, but Seoul has long objected to the idea. In his statement announcing the agreement, Korea's foreign minister didn't offer many clues to Seoul's positions on the matter.
Seoul will hold talks with related organizations to bring about an appropriate action.
However, Japan's Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida, speaking after the announcement, told Japanese reporters he understood that the statue would be moved. If that were to happen, it would likely draw objections in Korea, especially from the elderly women who have gathered around the statue for rallies every Wednesday for the past 24 years. Lee Soo-in, Arirang News.
Now, the issue of Japan's wartime atrocities against Korean women is one of the biggest disputes that has strained Seoul-Tokyo ties. With this latest agreement, tensions could ease dramatically. For the experts' take on the historic deal, Kim Jun reports.
The landmark deal on Japan's World War II sex slavery is expected to help improve relations between South Korea and Japan. Political pundits predict that diplomatic channels will first be restored, with an increased number of officials making visits between the two countries. It is one of the key steps to normalize state relations. And as North Korea remains a looming threat, it's likely that as ties warm, Seoul and Tokyo will also seek to boost security cooperation in Northeast Asia.
South Korea and Japan could also boost their information intelligence sharing. The timing of the resolution is ideal in creating a conducive environment for another Korea-Japan summit that could take place on the sidelines of the Nuclear Security Summit next March.
The researcher adds, however, there are still other issues both sides need to work on. It wasn't until 3 years after President Park Geun-hye took office that she held her first face-to-face with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe due to long-running historical rows. Tokyo continues to aggravate Seoul by claiming a territorial dispute over Korea's easternmost islets of Dokdo in the East Sea. There's also concern over a rising nationalist right-wing movement in Japan that glorifies and justifies the wartime atrocities, not to mention Tokyo's moves to distort and whitewash history in school textbooks. And perhaps one of the most public and upsetting acts that Tokyo continues to display to not only South Korea but also China and neighboring countries are the regular tributes that government officials pay to the controversial Yasukuni Shrine, which honors a number of Class A war criminals from World War II. Kim Jun, Arirang News.
Now, in other news, airstrikes from a US-led coalition have killed 10 Islamic State leaders in Iraq and Syria in the last month. Giving a briefing in Baghdad on Tuesday local time, Washington spokesman for the campaign against ISIS, Steve Warren, said that one of them, French national Sharaf al-Moadan, had direct links to the ringleader of the terror attacks on Paris in November. The US Army colonel said al-Moadan was killed in Syria on December 24th. He said the US will continue to hunt ISIS leaders who are working to recruit, plan and inspire attacks against the United States. And over in Pakistan, a suicide bombing outside a government office in Islamabad has killed at least 26 people and seriously injured dozens more. According to local police, the attacker rammed his motorbike into the main gate of the office building and detonated his explosives. A faction of the Pakistani Taliban has claimed responsibility for the attack. The militant group is known to be fighting to overthrow the government and establish hardline Islamist rule. The group's spokesman said it targeted the office because it's part of Pakistan's anti-terrorism war. Eastern China is continuing to suffer its worst smog of the year. According to China's National Weather Agency, levels of PM 2.5 in parts of Beijing reached 543 micrograms per cubic meter last night, and that is more than 20 times higher than the World Health Organization's recommended maximum exposure. The figure is also higher than when Beijing issued 2 red smog alerts earlier this month. However, the authorities only issued a yellow alert this time, the second highest alert on the country's 4-tier system. Other parts of China are also being affected by the new round of heavy smog, including Tianjin and the neighbouring province of Hebei. A cold front is expected to gradually disperse the smog later on Wednesday, giving residents some brief respite, but the smog is expected to get worse again from Thursday. Now, earlier this year, Korea launched 17 innovation centres nationwide to help startups get off the ground. And on Tuesday, the government held an opening ceremony for a new complex in downtown Seoul that's been opened to support startups in the creative content industry. Song Ji-sun takes us there.
93 startups will be provided with full support to turn their ideas into killer content, with part or all of their rent funded by the government. Their new home is a 17-story building in downtown Seoul that used to house a government agency, but has been revamped to cater to their needs.
It's not easy for us to get contacts or steal contracts, but this is a one-stop service with similar startups clustered together.
Speaking at the opening ceremony for this wholesale center on Tuesday, President Park Geun-hye said culture content could become the next growth engine for Korea, as the sector has already proven itself in the area of job creation.
저는 우리가 직면한 여러 가지 도전을 해결할 열쇠가 우리의 문화에 있고 문화 콘텐츠 산업에 있다고 생각합니다. 문화 콘텐츠 산업은 제조업의 2배가 넘는 일자리를 만들어내고 종사자의 절반 이상이 34세 이하입니다. 또한 문화 콘텐츠는 그 자체로 훌륭한 상품 가치를 가질 뿐만 아니라 제조업과 서비스 산업의 발전까지 선도하는 잠재력을 가지고 있습니다.
The government has set aside $113 million next year to foster the sector, and projects 53,000 new jobs will be created over the next 5 years. The new center is part of a government project to build a chain of culture facilities that will foster cultural convergence, beginning with the brainstorming phase and including investment and consumption. The full chain, which includes a culture academy, a content lab, and platforms for experiencing both traditional and modern Korean culture, is set to be completed by 2017. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Now, HUBO, the Korean-built humanoid robot that won a US-based robotics competition this past summer, made experts do a double take on Korea's technology in this sector. To find out how advanced Korea's robotics technology is at present, Kwon Jang-ho went to meet with HUBO and his team.
Meet HUBO. Weighing in at 80 kilos and standing at 1.75 centimeters tall, HUBO is a humanoid robot developed at the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology to enter a robotics competition set up by DARPA, the US Department of Defense research agency. Thank you. It was HUBO's versatility and quick feet, or wheels rather, that brought him the top spot at this year's DARPA's Robotics Challenge. The challenge was inspired in the aftermath of the nuclear disaster at Fukushima in 2011, and research was being done on how robots could be developed to help in similar situations. The robots did not look particularly pretty, but the challenge was about functionality, and HUBO passed with flying colours, completing all tasks in the quickest time. One of the most unique features is how it transforms down to use wheels in its knees, allowing it to move swiftly and stably. Falling over is still one of the biggest obstacles bipedal robots face. HUBO also has an ingenious way of traversing stairs and rough terrain by rotating its body and walking backwards. For Professor Oh, the mastermind of HUBO, it was a proud moment, but surely the journey was not easy. Different versions of HUBO have been in development since 2002.
We're very happy that HUBO came first, but that doesn't mean he's the best robot or we have the best robot technology in the world. But what we showed is that we can now compete with countries from whom we had learnt from in the past.
Korea has advanced greatly in the field of robotics, but Professor Oh warns that there's still a long way to go.
Korea is still a newcomer in the field of robotics, especially robotics for businesses. We basically import 100% of our manufacturing robots. The government and businesses need to think long-term, continue investing, and encouraging research.
Further advancements and developments are continuously being done on HUBO, while at the same time HUBO has been busy, so as to speak, working as a model and tool for further research and education. Moreover, HUBO has even been invited to attend next month's World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos.
The Davos Forum is where the world's top political, business, and cultural minds gather. We'll show what HUBO can do, but we'll also look at what aspects they are interested in and see what we can take away from that.
Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Well, those are stories we have for you on this Wednesday morning here in Seoul, Korea. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out the website arirang.com/news. See you later. Goodbye.